Here's all the stuff laid out very nicely. We've got the hull, and it's all been painted by Lito and the guys here at the yacht club. We've got the 3 spars. The big one is the mast, the fat one is the boom, and the thin one is the yard for the top of the sail. Then we have the sail and the ropes and the few fittings that we need. Already on the back of the boat we have the rudder fittings. They're already there. When you put those on, you should put the pin through the middle so that they're aligned neatly before the bolts are tightened. Okay, here we have the yard and boom laid out. The boom is the fat one and the yard is the small one. The yard goes to the top of the sail. And the boom goes to the bottom of the sail. There's something important to know, and that is that, as I said, this H is the front bottom corner of the sail. The front end of the boom has 2 holes in it, so the 2 holes need to be near the H. Same with the yard. If we go up to the yard, following the same edge of the sail, you see this corner is not a sharp corner or a 90-degree corner. It's a very, very relaxed corner. Again, the yard has 2 holes at this front edge of the sail. Okay, with the boom, if you have a look at it, there's a straight edge and a curved edge. See, the upper edge close to the sail is straight. That's the way we want it here. Now with the rope, you tie a bowline knot through the eye. We'll have a link to how to tie the bowline knot in the comments below this video. There's the bowline knot. Then it goes through the second hole, not the front hole, the back hole, through the boom. Back through the eye. We have to be careful about how much rope we're using. You can waste a lot of rope doing this. So now this gets pulled back at an angle, and then to hold the eye close to the boom, we go under the boom 2 times. Under the boom the second time and through the eye. So you've got 2 pieces of rope holding the sail down to the boom. Then you tie it off by doing 2 half hitches through the eye. You do 2 half hitches through the bowline. So pull it tight, pull it through. That's through the original eye here, through the original loop, and 1 more. We will also have a link to a video on how to tie that knot in the comments below the video. When you cut the end, you use a block and a knife. Don't cut it too short. You want 2 or 3 inches, 75 mm, so that you can untie it and retie it later if you need to do so. If you cut it too short, it will be too hard to retie later. This is the back end of the bottom of the sail. You can see the boom doesn't have a hole yet, so we need to put the hole in. Put a wooden block underneath the end of the boom. Then pull the bottom of the sail out so it's a bit stretched, and choose a point about there. It's not far from the end, maybe about 40 millimeters from the end of the boom. Okay, and then we drill down through. The purpose of the block is to stop the timber from splitting when the drill comes out the other side. Okay. With the back corner of the sail, we use two different ropes. We use the same thin red rope that we used for the front end of the boom, and we use that to tension the sail out towards the end of the boom. So it gets tied on with a bowline knot again. You have to leave a little bit of length at the end of the bowline knot, not too short. Then you go through the newly drilled hole. Then back through the eye, back through the eye in the sail, and then you pull it a little bit tight and you measure out around 300 millimeters or a foot of extra rope, and you cut at that point. The end of the rope should be melted again with the lighter. We just tie it with 2 half hitches around the rope itself. So 1, 2. This edge of the sail doesn't have to be tight. The other edge of the sail does have to be tight, but this one doesn't have to be tight. We'll talk more about how tight it has to be later. Now this only holds the corner of the sail out to the end of the boom. We also need to stop it from moving up and down. So we use the main sheet for that. The main sheet is the thick rope which you will use to control the sail. So again, we do a bowline, but this time it goes through the eye and the bowline gets tied around the boom as well. Gets tied underneath the boom. So there's the bowline, but you have to make it as short as possible by pulling the end of the rope through to make it nice and short. Its job is to hold the sail close to the boom. Now we have a rope holding the sail down to the boom, and we have a rope that is adjustable pulling the sail out towards the end of the boom. So that is the boom done. Remember the H is at the front of the sail? So we go up the sail to where the yard is. The yard is the thinner one. Again, the front end of the yard has 2 holes in it. We use exactly the same method as we did with the boom, starting with a bowline. A bowline around the sail, through the second hole, back through the eye, and then around the yard twice. then finally through the bowline loop. We'll have to tidy up that end by melting it. One half hitch, then another half hitch. Normally you only need 2 or maybe 3 half hitches. If you do more than 3, we whisper amateur. And then we leave another 100 millimeters and go to cut. So now we have to do the other end of the top edge of the sail. So we go to the other end of the yard. This is the very top of the sail. There's no hole in the end of the yard, so we have to measure that out first. So we pull the sail out to the end of the yard, and then we add 1 hand width and drill another hole. We tie a bowline knot around the top of the sail. We'll go through and tidy up all those fraying ends with the lighter afterwards. So this will be similar to the other end. Now there's an adjustment we have to make. We have to look at the size of the crease we make with the sail. We can pull really hard and there's a hard crease, and we can relax it so the crease disappears. See, the crease appears and then it disappears when we release the tension. So what we do is we pull it on tight so there's a crease, and then we release it so the crease gets a bit softer but doesn't disappear. Then we can tie off the end with 2 half hitches. You just tie the half hitches around the base. This tension is really important. 1 half hitch, second half hitch. Now we go underneath the boom and through the eye 2 times. Underneath the boom 1 time, through the eye, again. Make it tidy. Tie through the original bowline loop. It just passes through the bowline loop, and then 1 half hitch and 2 half hitches, and then we trim that off with about 100 millimeters extra, about that much, and then we cut. If you look at this edge of the sail, this top edge of the sail, it has to be tight and springy. There's quite a lot of tension in there. Right? With the bottom edge of the sail, it actually has to be loose because you want to get some curve in there to develop power in the sail. So the 2 methods are quite different. The top edge needs to be tight and the bottom edge needs to be loose. At the moment, if you go sailing, there will be a gap open up between the yard and the top of the sail. We close that up by putting lacing along the edge. The lacing is the thinnest rope in the rigging kit. You start by tying a bowline around the bottom eyelet. Then you find the other end, and the other end goes underneath the boom and through the eye, and then you pass the end of the rope underneath that section. So it actually ties each individual hole close to the yard. Okay, so just looking at that, that's a knot, and see how it goes around the yard at that point. And let's move to the next one. So make sure you do it the same way all the time. This time we go from underneath Then find the length of line that just went around, put the rope through, pull it tight, and you've got another half hitch knot holding that down. You don't have to get them too tight yet, we just get them threaded now and pull them tight later. Okay, and it's just the same all the way up the yard. Second last hole. And then after the last half hitch is tied, where the line goes from underneath the sail through the eyelet, pulls out and then ties back to itself. We move to the end, where the line goes from underneath the sail through the eyelet, pulls out approximately another 1 foot line, and then cut it. The job after this will be to pull it all tight. Now we go down to the front end of the yard again, and we start tightening up the lacing. And we do that one section by one section, pulling it nice and tight and making it neat up against the sail. Pull it tight, keep working up towards the end of the sail. This can be quite tight. You'll feel how stretchy the rope is. And then at the end, you pull it nice and tight and do 2 half hitches. Half hitches, maybe 3, but if you do 4, we'll say amateur. Okay, so with the top end, we've now completed putting the spars on the sails. Top end is tied. The front end of the yard is tied. Also, the lacing rope is very tidy and holding the edge of the sail close to the yard. Moving down to the front bottom of the sail with the big H on it. There's rope to pull it out towards the end, and then 2 loops around the boom to stop the corner from moving away from the boom. And then at the back end, there are 2 types of rope used. The red rope is adjustable. We can adjust that to change the shape in the bottom of the sail. But the main sheet, the white rope, is permanently tied with the smallest possible bowline around the boom. So now the sail is more or less ready, apart from cleaning up the ends of the ropes by melting them up. Now for rigging the mast. This is the bottom of the mast. The front of the mast is where the step is the shortest. The short end is the front, so roll the mast over so the front edge is up, and then just below the fiberglass, you can see the fogging of the fiberglass, you write an F for the front. This is permanent and makes it easy to line everything up. Then you turn it so that the right side of the mast is ready for us to put the cleat on. Then measure up 900 millimeters. Take measure there from the end, 900, and put a mark there. And drill the first hole. It doesn't have to go deep. Just drill a bit and you'll suddenly feel it release. Then put the screw in, give it a couple of turns to hold it in place. That's enough. Line the cleat up with the side of the mast and drill the second hole. You only have to go through the thin wall of the mast. The mast is not solid. Okay, then you change over to the screwdriver bit and you can wind in the screws. This is just the fitting process. We will actually put epoxy on the screws later. Just for now we're fitting it. So that's the cleat in place. Now we do the top. So there's the front of the mast, and we'll turn it so the front is over that way. That means that this is the back of the mast on the left. So we go up the top, and there are already 2 holes drilled. So first thing you do is put an 8 knot. There are links to all the knots in the notes underneath this video. So that's an 8 knot, which looks like this. It looks like an 8. Then you grab the other end and you feed it through the hole from the front. The stainless steel ring goes on the end, and then the other end of the rope is threaded through the other hole. Now you tie the other 8 knot. You need to get it as close to the mast as possible. So once it's tied, it will usually be a little bit loose. So you have to pull it up tight by pulling the rope through the middle of the knot. So when you pull the ring side, it's not much of a gap. It doesn't pull out very far. That's about right. After the second knot is tied up so tight, the rope needs to be cut. You can't cut it too short because you'll never be able to take the knot out again. So about that width of a fist, and then cut it behind the fist there. The longest rope you've been supplied with is the rope to pull the sail up the mast. It's called the halyard, and we start by taking the bottom end through the cleat, through the bottom of the cleat, and then tying an 8 knot in the end. Pull it tight so it won't move. Now we take the other end up to the top. It goes through the ring at the top and then comes back down to the cleat again. Tight. Then go 1 time around the cleat. Then cross over 3 times. Cross 1, cross 2, cross 3. Then go around the base 1, 2, 3 times and pull to lock. This is the correct way of tying off this type of cleat. So this is the best method for cleating the rope because it doesn't involve a knot, which means that if you need to release it in an emergency, you just have to unwind it. This is the mast complete. It's got the cleat, it's got the ring up the top, and the halyard has been attached as well. So that's all ready to go. Loop beside the mast to attach the downhaul to. It's a short length of rope. You put an 8 knot in one end, and then from put it right at the end of the rope, and then it goes up from underneath the deck. And then back down the other hole. And then you tie an 8 knot in the other side, and again it has to be as short as possible. So you have to go around underneath the deck to tie it tight. To control the angle of the sail when you're sailing it, you need to put in the Traveller. The Traveller is a rope that goes to these holes on both sides. And there's one just the same on the other side. Now the Traveller rope is the 1.5 meter long piece of rope, and you need a pulley as well. So first of all, with the rope, put a figure 8 knot in the end of the rope. We want it close to the end this side so it can be looser on the other. Then feed the other end up through the hole, up through the Traveller hole. Feed it through. Then put the pulley on the Traveller and move over to the other side and feed it through the Traveller hole again. Then pull all the extra rope through and tie an 8 knot close to the edge of the boat. This doesn't have to be really tight. When it's in use, it will actually lift up under the tension of the main sheet, and that's about how we want it. So at the top of the sail, the yard, there needs to be an attachment point for the halyard. We'll show you how to do that now. You go up to the front end of the yard, then you count back 5 spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And with this rope, which is the excess part of the halyard loop for the top of the mast, so we see it round 3 times, and then we tie the ends together with a square knot, which some people call a reef knot. Left over right and right over left. Again, a link to all the knots is in the notes below this video. So the halyard pulls the sail up. We also need to pull the sail down to get tension. So we start with the front bottom part of the sail, and we put on a rope called the Downhaul. Basically, we start with the Downhaul rope, we put an 8 knot in the end, and then with the 8 knot in line with the back of the hide H. I'll show you that in a moment. So it goes round. Again, the clove hitch is shown in the links below this video. So it pulls nice and tight. And when you pull it backwards and forwards, it jams, so it won't move around. And just make sure it's lined up with the back of the H. See the H is at the front of the sail? So the back edge of the H lines up with the downhaul. That's a good starting position. There are ways of playing around with it a bit, but maybe not necessary. The rest of the rigging requires that the boat be rigged to fit the last pieces in the right places. We've made a rigging video which is listed separately below this video. Trim 1 meter of rope from the end of the halyard. This is 1 meter of the halyard rope. If you look at the end carefully, the rope is made out of 2 pieces, an inner and an outer. The inner is the high strength rope, the outer is to make easy handling. In this case, we're going to split them, so we've got 2 pieces of rope instead of 1. Okay, so now 2 pieces of rope when there were only 1 before. The thin one is the strong one. The fatter, fluffier one is for the weaker one. Now we're going to use the weaker one for the preventer. So here are the 2 ropes we changed into 1. We take the bigger diameter one and we make the preventer with that. We tie a bowline around the boom. The bowline goes in front of the downhaul, between the front of the sail and the downhaul. There's the bowline, bow line. Right, so now we have to prepare to put the pulleys on the boom. There are 2 pulleys to go on the boom. There's a front one, which goes on in line with the back of the seat. There's the seat, go directly up to the boom and put a screw in right there. We'll just put it in dry, but when you put it in, you should put it in with either varnish or epoxy. That will stop the next rope from moving around when it's in use. Pulleys have 2 different directions of mounting. One goes parallel with the sheave, one goes perpendicular to the sheave. They have slightly different methods of being lashed on. The main axis of the pulley has to be parallel with the boom. This is the way we tie this one on. Simple, it's just 2 loops through the eye. Don't waste rope, tie it up as short as you can, and it gets tied off with a square knot. A square knot is normally enough, but this is really slippery spectra rope. So we use a couple of extra half hitches to make sure it's really secure. This screw on top is to stop the pulley from sliding around. Both loops go on the side of the screw towards the front of the boat. This is the other type of pulley. Put the rope through to make a loop like this first. We'll just do this again as an example. It's behind the boom. Then one end goes through the attachment loop on the block, and then you tie a square knot. Set it up so that the pulley is very close under the boom. We don't want a big gap. Here the gap is too big, so here's the square knot. And because it's a slippery spectra rope, you can add a couple of half hitches just to make sure. Here you can see the axis of the pulley is in line with the boom, but it's very loose, so this should be much tighter before cutting the rope. Okay, so that's the front pulley, so let's move to the back. With the back, we reduce the load on the boom by putting the lashing through the eye in the sail, so the load of the pulley goes directly to the sail. This type of pulley can be tied on with 2 loops around and a square knot. Pull it tight. Again, you can see the axis is correct for the sheet to go through parallel with the boom.